So I'm assuming it's the afternoon because I'm on East Coast time, so. But before I begin, I'm going to give you guys a chance to decide if you want to stay or if you want to leave. And so the decision is based on the fact that you initially invited Alejandra Ceja. While we share the same last name, we come from about the same area. She's from Huntington Park. I'm from East LA, so it's only about a 10-minute drive without traffic. And she's about 6 feet, and I'm not. I won't tell you my height. So with that, you're getting the other Ceja, Beatriz Ceja. I've been with the U.S. Department for a number of years now. I never envisioned working at the Department of Ed. The job that I currently have, I didn't even know existed. So I really want to thank you for inviting me to come and speak to you about a topic that I am extremely passionate about, and that's one of student success. And as mentioned in the introduction, I am now serving in the role of Division Director to the Hispanic-Serving programs, Hispanic Institutional, Hispanic-Serving Institutions Program. I'm still trying to figure out my title. I've been in this role for approximately 6 months, and prior to that, I've done a lot of work in the pre-K-12 space. So a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to the Jefferson Memorial, and I don't know how many of you have ever been to Washington, D.C. We have a lot of memorials in what we call the mall. It's not a shopping center mall, it's what we call that middle space between the Lincoln and the Capitol. And for the first time, I noticed the following quote: "I look at the diffusion of light in education as a resource most to be relied on for ameliorating the condition, promoting the virtue, and advancing the happiness of man." Now, this was Jefferson speaking in 1822, and I think this quote still holds true. I know growing up, my parents always noted education as the key to a future success. I think we've gotten there, we've made progress. We are seeing an increase of Hispanic and low-income students that are graduating from high school. Just recently, we released the percent, and that we're currently at about 82% high school graduation rate. So our numbers are definitely moving forward. However, access to college education is one thing without us really thinking about the through part. What's going to get us to the other end? What's going to make sure that students not only enroll, but actually complete a college education? So as I was walking in, I heard some of you talk about your efforts to recruit more African American students. And I just want to kind of have us think about recruitment as only step one, because the true measure of what happens will be if we are supporting the students that we're recruiting, so that not only do they show up day one, but they're actually walking across the stage with a college degree. That will truly be success. So I applaud you for wanting to increase the population, but I challenge you to think about what supports are going to be needed, what changes will you as a faculty member, as an administrator, need to think about in order to help students actually complete a degree program? President Obama has often said that there is no better economic policy than one that produces more graduates. And I think we all need to think about this as a responsibility, not just of policymakers, but an individual responsibility, that we have a responsibility to ensure that there's an increase in graduates as faculty, as administrators, as parents, and I know we have some students joining us here today, and as students. You came in here to the university to pursue a dream, pursue a goal. And so what assistance do you need? What supports do you need? What do you need to do in order to ensure that you walk across the stage with a degree in hand? To this end, the U.S. Department of Education is definitely working towards improvements. We have more students than ever are being taught in college and career-ready, with college and career-ready standards, and we've seen a decrease in the dropout rates. Again, as previously mentioned, we are at about an 82% high school graduation. We are seeing more and more Hispanic and Black students enroll on college campuses, but we still have a long way to go. As the statistics show, we're not there with respect to graduation rates at the college level. So we're getting them to college, but we're not getting them through college. And so I applaud all of you that are here, because this shows that the campus does have some intentionality with respect to ensuring that students get through college. Currently, the U.S. is ranked about 12th or 13th, depending on what report you pick up, with, compared to other industrial countries that have a college-educated population. In order for us to move back to where we were in the 1970s, where we were ranked at the top, means that we're going to have to move about 20% points. We're gonna have to go from where we are, which is about 40% now, to about 60%. And I know that the president has set a goal of moving us in that direction. What that means for the Hispanic students is that we're gonna have to graduate about 5.5 million more students in order just for us to move towards that trajectory of improvement. And again, the issues around Hispanic educational outcomes, it's not just a personal issue to me, it is really an economic issue. When we think about the numbers, already in California, Hispanics are the majority minority. And so when we think about the number of students that will be graduating from high school, will be attempting to access a college education, what support systems do we have in place to welcome them, to ensure their success? You're all too familiar with these stats, where as your educational attainment increases, so does your income. I know sometimes it doesn't feel that way. And for some, maybe the blue part where we put in approximate taxes may seem a little bit low, but we're actually missing out on an entire economic base if we choose to ignore the issues that some of these students face with respect to ensuring that they complete a college education. So I'm going to pause here for a moment, and I know you probably weren't ready for a dialogue, but I want to pause here because I want us to think about a campus that is becoming more and more diverse. How do we as a campus community ensure increased student engagement? So I want us just to kind of think for a moment, maybe talk to your neighbor next to you, and just what is one of the things that you know you can do to increase student engagement? Because I really believe that college success goes beyond just enrollment. College success is about first enrolling, second engaging. So if you just indulge me for a moment and just kind of write to the person that, if you just turn around, the person that you're sitting next to. What does the increased student diversity mean with respect to engagement? Okay. If I can have at least 1 or 2 volunteers, just share. Oh, you were stretching.
Wait, you're gonna make me say it? So we were just talking about lists of commonly seen high-impact practices, and how many of them seem to require direct, close contact between students and faculty. And I guess as less than an aside, more than an aside, ideally not racist faculty, right? Or well-informed, educated faculty, right? But it seems like that we need more faculty, right? Teaching more, fewer students at a time, right? And more pertinent, relevant information.
Okay.
So the balance between student success, I think it's struck between an approach to create an environment in which the student is able to identify with the institution. And that is through faculty, number one, who inspire, who promote learning, who will in the future give the students the opportunity to visualize themselves both within the university and outside in their society. And on the other hand, with the university that promotes this student engagement. So it's a double comprehensive sort of approach, I think.
I'll take one more. Oh, okay. Can I hear from the student? Thank you.
We discussed as students that they can be more engaged with us when they understand that we're not just students, and we have a bunch of other priorities, and also that we all have different learning styles, and a lot of the faculty only teach to one learning style.
Thank you. I think I'm going to lead with that. You know, as a elementary teacher, one of the things that I learned in my preparation program was about making sure that I met the student where he or she was, you know, making sure that I set up the correct and appropriate accommodations, that I differentiated instruction. And so I wonder to what extent, as you move into the ranks of higher ed, do we think about that pedagogy, that ensuring that we are differentiating our instruction, ensuring that we are in fact engaging students that have various learning styles. As our population increases, I think we need to think about the changes that we need to make as individuals as well as institutions. And I call it the 3 E's, or the E3, and that's that it's one is enrollment. Great. We have an increased student enrollment that represents the community. So we have increases in African Americans that are attending college, with increases in Hispanics that are attending college. But then that can't be the end. We then have to think about all those close contact that you mentioned, those direct student services that truly engage all the students. For the last years, the federal government has invested over $550 million with respect to providing grants to Hispanic-serving institutions. Yet, our investment hasn't necessarily seen those increases in graduation rates of Hispanics with post-secondary education. And so we need to think about what we're doing to truly engage a diverse student on our campus. What are we doing with respect to encouraging them and encouraging ourselves to rethink how we are teaching? So that's my E3. The enroll is one thing, engage is number two, and then encouraging students to not just come to our campus, but also graduate from our campuses. This just reiterates what I've been talking about, that our campuses across the country are changing. We're seeing we're seeing increases in minority students. Same thing here. Again, just to reiterate that what's happening on campuses is changing, but I don't think that our practices are catching up with the new student. So this concept of the traditional student is not really there anymore. I would consider myself a traditional student in the sense that I graduated from high school. I went to a 4-year campus, and fortunately for me, I graduated in 4 years. I'm almost a species that's about to be extinct, when you think about it that way. But I was the first in my family to graduate from college. And I know I didn't graduate from college in 4 years without the supports. Because my first year in college, I actually was in a very bad car accident where the person next to me died, who happened to be my roommate. And if it weren't for the counseling that I received on campus, if it weren't for the college administrators that reached out to me, if it weren't for the tutoring that I received so that I could catch up, given all the time that I missed from school, I would not have graduated. And so in essence, there was a lot of intentionality in that. There was an intention to ensure that I finish, but this just can't be my story. We really have to think about the intentionality of the campus, the intentionality of us as administrators, as faculty, to ensure that students complete that students complete their degree program. And I hear a lot from folks that say, well, the students are working a lot. Our students have long commutes. Our students are this, our students are that. But I don't often hear institutions think about how they're changing, how they're responding to the changing student. And so that's where I challenge you to think about what you're doing to meet the needs of this new, for lack of better words, contemporary student. That student that is older, that student that is actually working more than just the work-study job, that maybe has 2 or 3 jobs? What is the campus doing to ensure that their needs are met? And while I don't represent the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanic Americans, that's the other Alejandra Ceja, this year they did celebrate a 25th anniversary. And you can see from 1990, when the initiative was first started, there's been a trajectory of improvement. Again, but I challenge us to think about what's next. It can't be where we are satisfied with the 15.7% of Hispanics who have a bachelor's degree. We know that there are practices going on throughout the country, because when the White House Initiative put out a call for bright spots, we received a large amount of examples of good work happening. The unfortunate part of it is that it's happening in isolation. And so we know about those high impact practices. We know how important tutoring is. We know how important advising is. We know how important mentoring is. We know that it's important for students to see themselves reflected in the faculty. So I ask the administrators here, how diverse is your faculty? So this is what we're proposing to do for 2017. The president has requested an increase in all aspects of the education pipeline. The budget request for 2017 includes about $69.4 billion in discretionary funding. This is funding that goes to support specific initiatives. The budget is built on advancing equity and excellence, supporting teachers and school leaders, and promoting access, affordability, and completion in post-secondary education. And I'm actually going to skip through some of these to get to the one that's important to us here. So under promoting access, affordability, and completion in post-secondary education, the president has requested $61 million investment to make community college free and provide low-income students with up to 2 years of college at a 4-year HBCU or minority-serving institution. Again, these are just requests for 2017. We're also requesting Pell for the summer. We've heard that that is a need, especially at a lot of the minority-serving institutions. We're also pushing campuses to be innovative about their services to ensure increases in student graduation rates. And so we're proposing to provide financial incentives to institutions that respond to that challenge and where we see increases in college graduation. And those financial incentives include college opportunity and graduation bonuses, the Innovation for Completion Fund. We're trying to simplify FAFSA. We're not there yet. We've made some changes. Believe me, when I filled out the FAFSA, it was a lot more complicated than the one you guys have to fill out today. So we're making some improvements, but we know we're not there yet. We have a request for a second chance Pell, and then protecting students and taxpayers to enhance the FSA enforcement. Just this year, we received an increase of about $7 million to the Hispanic-Serving institutions appropriations, which means that we will be able to fund about 16 to 20 additional Hispanic serving institutions. Last year, we funded 96. We'll be adding anywhere between 16 to 20. This year, we will also be competing the STEM and Articulation Hispanic Serving Institutions funding. That is approximately $92 million, and we hope to fund about 109 institutions. Currently, we have vetted the number of institutions throughout the country, and we have found that there are about 414 institutions that meet the Hispanic serving institutions. So we are increasing with respect to Hispanic enrollment, but again, that is not necessarily reflecting in the graduation rates. We're requesting additional funding for First in the World, for education, innovation, and research, and then to Inform Ed. How many of you have applied for grants from the U.S. Department of Education, of the faculty here? Okay, so you, if you're not aware of this, you know that we are increasing the requirements with respect to evidence. We're asking for increased rigor in the evaluation of the programs supported by the U.S. Department of Education. We're also requesting that you build your services, your interventions, your practices, strategies on previous programs that have evidence of working. And so we're increasing our evidence standards and all our funding, and so that's just something for you guys to think about if you are thinking of applying for grants from the Department of Education. From our office and the Office of Postsecondary Education, we annually fund about 7.8 billion in discretionary funding. This is money that goes out to HBCUs, HSIs, and APCs, and other minority serving institutions. Programs that we fund out of our office are the Strengthening Historically Black Colleges and Universities, the Predominantly Black Institutions Program, Minority Science and Engineering Improvement Program, Historically Black Graduate Institutions Program, the HBCU and PBIMA, the Master's Program, the Minorities and Retirement Security Programs, the First in the World student support programs like the TRIO, which include Upward Bound, Gear Up, and a number of these programs. These are just some statistics for you to think about with respect to the MSI enrollment. As previously mentioned throughout this whole dialogue, is that our student demographics are changing. But yet, our graduation rates are not where they should be. For HSIs, we have about 29%. For tribal colleges and universities, 21%, HBCUs, 30%, and APCs, 33%. And if you compare that to the national average, we have a huge gap. So here's food for thought. How can higher education institutions effectively meet the needs of Hispanic and low-income students? What competitive advantages might Hispanic-serving institutions enjoy in educating low-income first-generation students? What factors are important for HSIs to increase their contribution to degree productivity? So those that thought I was going to come in here with a recipe of this is what you need to do in order to ensure that we increase Graduation rates, I'm sorry that I didn't bring that list with me because the challenge is really on you. To what extent is this campus intentional about seeing increases in graduation rates for students that have high needs? Again, as I mentioned, when I came in, I applaud you for thinking about recruitment efforts to increase your African American population. But unless we do something to ensure that the population is going to feel welcome, that the population is going to have their needs met, we're going to be doing the population a disservice if we bring them in and then not provide any support services for them to graduate. So with that, I'm kind of pose the challenge to you to think about these questions. As I mentioned, I didn't bring any answers with me other than just some information about what we are seeing nationally, our request for the 2017 budget, which we have proposed. So are there any questions at this time?
Thank you for sharing your experience about experiencing a traumatic event during your first semester as a college student. That happens to a lot of our students. I think we're aware of that here. And you mentioned supports for students, and I'm guessing that what you're talking about is going beyond like a first-year experience program.
Yes.
And so can you give some examples of intentional supports that you see would be really helpful for increasing retention rates for some of our groups here on campus that we're serving?
Sure. And I know that some of these services may already exist here, but what I've seen that has been helpful to students are emergency funds, where students don't have to go through a lot of paperwork and loops and administration to get a $100 grant or a $200 grant, because that's really what they need to just help them get to the next level. So while I hear campuses say, oh yes, we have this emergency fund, by the time a student has to complete the application and show proof of need, half of them leave the application behind and decide, you know what, it's not even worth it. Because they may not be seeing that loan or that, grant is gonna help them get over to the next level, but we've made it so difficult for them. So I think facilitating processes for them as they work to navigate the system, just because you've made it in your first year, that may not be where we're losing some of the students. So to what extent as a campus are you looking at where the students are dropping off? And then other than the first year experience, do you have any other services to support the students where you're seeing the data as to where they're dropping off? So I've seen the emergency loan programs, faculty mentoring, and where the administration supports faculty to mentor students, where it's not just like, well, it's an accidental thing, but that departments actually welcome and encourage faculty to mentor students, and that it's not always mentoring the student that is getting the best grades in your class, but where they're mentoring the students that are having difficulties. It's one thing to tell students, I have office hours, but as a first generation student, if you don't even know what that means, If you were the successful kid in high school, and to raise your hand and ask questions and show up to office hours and say, I don't get it, and for the student to think, well, they're gonna see all my weaknesses, I'm not as smart as I thought I was, you know, I was first in my class in high school. You know, just to say, hey, I have office hours, you didn't show up to office hours, that's not enough. We need to think about tapping the student and taking the initiative as someone that understands the script of what happens on a college campus. Because there is a script to college that, as a first-generation student, we're unaware of it. I didn't have anyone go back home to and ask, like, what is meant by showing up to office hours? What is meant by this? When a professor says this, if my financial aid check hasn't come in and I haven't bought the book yet, you know, are there places where I can access the book, rent a book? If we know as a faculty person, we're always going to use that same book, are there opportunities, are there reading rooms where these books are available to some students that may not be able to afford that book? So those are some of the services that I'm seeing. I'm seeing departments that have libraries. They have their own library of books that they know that department uses all the time. I've seen universities that offer students loaner laptops so that the student doesn't have to go to that one computer center that's all the way on one end of campus, but that they can actually rent a laptop and take it with them to go meet with their group, to go to the library and use it that way. So those are some of the direct services that I've seen that are very intentional and that our federal funding supports. I know Title III supports that. I know the Title V funding allows for those type of expenses.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here, first of all. We appreciate that. You had mentioned in your comments about the year-round Pell and the summer Pell in particular, which is very critical issue here at Fresno State. You did mention that you didn't have all the answers. You weren't giving us answers. You were giving us questions. But I'm hoping that you'll be able to shed some light on the political landscape going forward with the president's budget release this past month. How do you see that playing out in Congress? Whether or not we can get that through to get the year round?
As I mentioned earlier, I've been in DC for about 20 years, and please don't quote me on this. This is not Department of Ed speaking. This is my own personal view. This is the most unpredictable Congress I've ever had to work under. So it's really an unknown. For the last few years, we are constantly on a continuing resolution. So again, this is a request. We are hoping that something happens and that we are not placed on another continuing resolution, given that this is an election year. So with that, it's really hard to say, given also some of the candidates' views on the Department of Education. So.
Yeah, I know it's hard to predict. The CSU system will be in Washington in 2 weeks, including President Castro and myself, and that will be one of our top priorities as far as advocating for that with our members of Congress.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah. But again, it's I don't think it has ever really been requested, the summer Pell. Campus has talked about it, and they said it would be great, and I don't know that it had ever been requested at the administration level. So this is really, I applaud your efforts and so many of the other college campuses for really pushing this. And as you know, the Higher Education Act is also due for a rewrite. We just completed the ESCA. So we just got that approved. We are moving to regulate some of the language in the ESSA. So we don't know if Congress is, okay, we're done, we'll wait for the next one to reauthorize EHA. How about I hear from you, thinking about the questions that I raised and the challenges for you. What are you seeing as something that that you can do with respect to your department or the program that you operate?
I don't have a question specifically to what you just asked, but I know earlier you said that campuses could look at how diverse their faculty is in regards to serving students. And I was also surprised to see Dr. Lamas raise his hand when he said that he was first generation. Because he has his high position here on campus, so that was pretty impressive to me. And I wonder if that's the same case for President Castro as well, if he was first generation. And that's very impressive to me. So in regards to diversity with faculty and members on campus, I wonder for Dr. Lamas and President Castro, if they had encounters with Hispanic men on their campuses that helped guide them through to get to the position where they were. And I say that because, you know, as a young African-American male being on campus, it can be sometimes hard to relate, not only racially, but culturally to faculty on campus. And that could be, you know, meeting with faculty and feeling comfortable enough to express myself the way I want to without feeling judged or being frowned upon, but because of what I say. And I also say that because I read that Fresno State will be hiring faculty. And I don't know if it was 70 positions or maybe that, I'm not sure what it was, but you know, I'd like to see how many of those positions will be African American males. And not only, you know, identify with me racially, but culturally, so I can have someone on the cabinet that I can look to if that's something that I might strive to be, and I can meet with them and converse with them in a way that I can feel like I'm being related to. So just a comment about that as far as diversity on campus and as well as with the faculty.
It's not just a comment. Actually, you should be up here. We should have had a student panel. When we're serious about student success, then we want to hear from students because you're right on point. You're right on point with that. I mean, access without support is not success. So I want the administrators here to take that to heart, thinking about, you know, increasing the diversity of the faculty. As faculty here, thinking about, you know, how open are we to someone that doesn't necessarily speak our language per se, you know, our PhD, high degree language. Are you okay? Are you comfortable with me showing up to your office just asking some questions, because it's not that I don't get it, it's just that I may be having some trouble and I may not even know how to articulate the issues that I'm having in the class or why I'm not necessarily being successful. So that's not a formula. That's individual. That's thinking about our own behavior, our own intention to really contribute to the success of a student. So thank you. So with that, I, again, just want to thank you and just remind you of what I know is truly important and what has helped me throughout. I mentioned I'm the first in my family to graduate from college. We're 9 altogether. My dad had a 6th grade education, and my mother had a 4th grade education. Just last year, I attended my youngest sister's graduation from UCLA, and I just found out that your college president knows my brother. They met at Berkeley, so still a very small world for us. But I ask you to think about the family, the intentionality of creating a family environment here on campus, the focus that we have to give everything, the follow-up. It's one thing to have these student success summits. I applaud you for that. I think it's great. But what follow-up is going to happen? What action is going to happen that truly is going to assist the students in graduating so that they can finish? So it's the family, the focus, the follow-up to get them to the finish line. So with that, thank you for the invitation. Sorry I didn't bring that many answers, but I hope that I made you think about how you can be intentional about student success.